Hey everyone, welcome to today's session on Kubernetes with YAML. Now let me walk you through the agenda for today's class. Today we will be seeing what is YAML, why we use YAML file, the structure of YAML file, basics of YAML, and how we use YAML concept or the format of YAML in Kubernetes. Note that YAML is not restricted just to Kubernetes, but other DevOps tools like Ansible, Docker Compose also use YAML to write the code. Okay, so YAML, yes, is very extensively used in Kubernetes, but it's equally used in Ansible playbooks also, as well as Docker Stack. So this session should give you an insight on how YAML works and how you can write YAML code with different DevOps tools. Now, one of the major concept in Kubernetes or for any CKA certification training that you go is YAML. Because if you know how to write the YAML code, you will be able to troubleshoot all the issues. You will be able to work with different controllers in your Kubernetes cluster. YAML forms the base of Kubernetes. Though it is not a concept of Kubernetes, but yeah, Kubernetes uses YAML files to create objects and controllers on itself for doing deployments, for creating containers, for scheduling containers, for deleting containers, you will use YAML. Okay. Now, what is the full form of YAML here? What is the full form of YAML? YAML, the full form is yet another markup language or ain't a markup language. So there's always arguments on it that what is the full form of YAML? Is it a markup language or it is not a markup language? So let us understand that. However, YAML definition stands as a human-friendly file format which supports data serialization standard for all programming languages. Okay, YAML is a human-friendly data serialization standard for all your programming languages. Okay, so YAML here, as I just said you, is an official definition for human-friendly. That is, if you see writing YAML code, a YAML file is very easy when compared to shell scripting. If I compare YAML with any shell script, with any code written in shell script, you will see that you have to be really good in scripting, shell scripting, so as to write any piece of code in shell. And also, if you see in shell scripting, the code is written with specific to the operating system. If one has to be really good in shell scripting so as to read the files written by other people. Whereas in YAML, the writing of the code is very easy, and anybody can who's new to scripting also can read and write YAML. Okay, it also forms as a data serialization, a way to send data from one system to other system where multiple programming languages are concerned, are included. Okay. Now, what are the purpose of YAML? Why do we use YAML? So basically, YAML is created when you want as part of configuration files. Whenever configuration files here means whenever you want to make changes to any of your systems or servers in your infrastructure, you will use configuration files. So that can be easily written with YAML. So that is why I was telling you YAML is not restricted just to Kubernetes, but configuration tools like Ansible also use YAML to apply changes on the server. YAML also forms the log files, like many a times log of many applications is in the JSON format. So in Docker and all, you will also see, or in Ansible, you will see the log files in YAML format. Even in Puppet, you will see that. Inter-processor messaging, then cross-language data sharing. Suppose one of the server is in Java, and on the other side you have another tool, let's say any other programming language like Ruby. So they both cannot understand each other. They both cannot understand each other. If data is to be sent from one server to another server, this can be sent using YAML. Similar concept like JSON also, which is used to send the data from one point to another point. Like in REST APIs also, if you see, we have an application which is written in Java, and we have another server, maybe let's say it is built using Node.js, and these two cannot communicate with each other. The data which is sent by the program is first converted into JSON or in YAML, that data can be understood by the Node.js server, and this is first Node JSON is converted into the object that Node.js can understand. Right? So that's the purpose for file formats like YAML or JSON, to share the data across cross-language applications. They are object persistent. JSON can be converted into an object that Java can understand. JSON can be converted into an object that Node.js can understand. Similarly, YAML data also, which is sent, can be converted into a Java object or an object that this server can understand. It includes handling multiple data, which is complex also, can easily be written in a YAML form. So note that YAML is not a programming language, it is not a scripting language, it is a file format. A file format, as in when you write XML, for example, you wrote any code in XML and you save that file, you open it on your Chrome browser, you open it as a text pad, you open it as a word pad, it will open in the same format. The format does not change. Similarly, YAML is also a format. You write the code in using the YAML file format. You open it in any file, it will still look the same, right? And in YAML, everything is written in the form of key and value. Okay, so you don't have to be an expert in programming or scripting to write the YAML code. So why should we use YAML? Because it is very easy to read and write. That is why we can use YAML wherever required. It's also very easy to implement. Another reason DevOps tools are using YAML to write the code. Then it is easily portable between the programming languages. I told you already. It can easily be used to communicate between the two servers also. To transfer the data from one server to another server, data can be converted from a programming language into YAML and transferred to another server where YAML code is converted into a programming language. They match the native data structure of the agile language. And you can perform, even maintaining YAML code is very easy and they're very flexible to use. And if I go to the next slide, now how does a YAML file looks like? Okay. Before we move on to the structure of YAML file, let's compare YAML with more known file formats, that is XML and JSON. So if I show you an example here in Notepad, so if I have to write an XML file, okay. So let's say I have, so in XML, you will always talk about tags, right? So let's say one parent tag. What is the important thing? Tag, value to the tag, and indentation is important, hierarchy. So the first tag will be called as a root tag. So if you see here, Edureka is a root tag here. Okay, I'm creating a tag called as Edureka, which is a root tag. Under Edureka, you may have trainings, right? Trainings, and under trainings, you may have a particular training, let's say DevOps. This is one training. Every opening tag has a closing tag in XML, right? Similarly, for the training, you may have trainer, and the trainer, let's say, is John. Every opening tag had a closing tag. Similarly, you can have one more training, let's say training 1. Similarly, you can have one more training. So once the training is completed, we close the trainings 1 tag. If you observe over here, Edureka is a super parent, training 1 is a parent. Under this, training and trainer are siblings, subtags, right? And training 1's close over here. Now you may have one more set of training, let's say trainings 2. In that you have again the same subtag training. Let's give it as Kubernetes. Okay, and let's say the trainer is Mark, and we will close the training. Okay, here. So if I have, if you see training 1 and training 2 are siblings to each other. They are at the same level and they have a parent called as Edureka, right? So this hierarchy has to be maintained while you are writing your XML file, and similarly in JSON and YAML also. So XML is a pioneer in many domains. We use XML, right? It was basically, if I remember, it was designed for backward compatibility. right? With standard SGML type of language, that is standard generalized markup language. So XML was designed for backward compatibility with SGML, that is standard generalized markup language. Okay, it basically supports lot of structured documentation, right? There are some design constraints which you have to follow in XML. That is, every opening tag should have a closing tag. Whatever value you have to give, you have to give it within the tags, and you have to follow the hierarchy in case of XML. Then we also got across another kind of file format, that is JSON. Now, writing the JSON file is using curly braces and colon. Now, it is very simple, okay, and you can easily parse the JSON file. There are many tools also available and easily readable by all of us, okay. And any programming language can also process and parse the JSON language. So, same thing, if I have to write it in JSON, then every JSON format starts with opening brackets and a closing bracket. Inside this opening bracket, you will write the main object. We call it as a JSON object, Edureka. The root object is called as the JSON object, Edureka. There you give colon, and under Edureka, if you want to write anything, you again open bracket, right? Under Edureka, if you want to write, you will open one more object, trainings one, right? You will give a colon and open a bracket again. Under the trainings, you will have a set of values like training, colon, DevOps, comma. It is always separated by comma in JSON. Here, if you see, there is no comma. Then, so this is like set of values for training one. Trainer, let's say John, right? And if this is the last value, you don't give a comma, you close the bracket. For trainings, you are closing the bracket. Similarly, you can have one more set of trainings, so that becomes your array, right? This is the main JSON object which has the first value, first array object, and then these are the values under it. Then again we have similarly trainings 2. That's again the second array object, and then a training is, let's say, Kubernetes, and let's say the trainer is Mark, right? So this is how you write in JSON using curly braces and colon. Okay, all right. And writing the JSON format is, again, if you see, it's very easy. Like, this is the very first time I'm teaching you, and I'm sure you will be able to understand it and read it very easily. The only thing you have to remember is opening brackets and then providing the key and a value to it. Similarly, if I have to write the same thing in YAML, in case of YAML also, you will write in the format of key and value. Okay. It's also human readable, and complete information will be given, can be easily understood in YAML, and you can parse the YAML code just like you do it in JSON. Note that every JSON file is also a valid YAML file. Many times there are locations where you can give JSON file or YAML file. So either you give JSON or YAML, they are same on. Okay, so if I have to write the same scenario in case of YAML, so in YAML you write very easy. It's all about key, colon. In YAML, everything is a key, colon, value, space, value. There is no opening brackets or closing brackets in YAML. In YAML, what is important is the spacing and the indentation. Key, colon, space, value. Now, whatever you want, okay, like a question, should be a key, colon, separated by a right side value. So over here, my first one is Edureka. That's the root. That's the main object. Colon, to this, the values are under it. The values are under it. So I have two underlying objects, that is training 1 and training 2. Right? So under trainings 1, you will give colon, and under it I have one more set of value like training, colon, let's say DevOps, and under training trainer value is John, right? Similarly, under trainings 2, you will, whatever is the key after that followed is a colon, then its value under it, because you want to pass set of values. So key, first you will give key, training is a key, colon value, let's say Kubernetes, okay, trainer, colon, whatever is the name, mark. Okay, so this is how you write the YAML code. Isn't it very easy to write the YAML code, the structure of the YAML code? Now, while writing YAML code, the basic guideline that you have to follow is you provide a key and a value to it. So value can be a single value, value could be multiple values. Okay, so let's see that also. Let's go to the slides. In YAML, you will have a key value pair. You can have a list of values and dictionary and map. Okay, three things will be there in YAML. So in basics of YAML, we should, why should you use YAML under that? YAML can allow you to provide list of values or map. Okay, any one of it you can use in while writing the YAML code. So here is the basic YAML code to create a pod. Now let's say I'll give you one more example here. If you see here in this particular YAML example, the first line of this configuration file. So this is a configuration file to create a container in Kubernetes. In YAML, every file will start with 3 dashes, friends. That's important. In YAML, every file will start with 3 dashes and end with 3 dots. It's not mandatory to give, but if you're giving, give 3 only, not more than that. Okay, it's a separator and it's optional to use it. Basically trying to define multiple structures. If you want to write multiple YAML files in the same file, in a single file, you want to write multiple structures of YAML, you can write it by separating them with 3 dashes. For example, let us say I want to write the first YAML file with 3 dashes. Okay, and this YAML file starts with Edureka, colon, let's say I started with company, Edureka. Okay, so key and a value, training, key, value to it is Kubernetes, trainer is the key, value to it is, let's say John, timing is the key and value to it is 7 a.m. let's say. So this is one YAML file and it can end with 3 dots like this. Within the same file, you can write one more YAML file separated by 3 dashes. So this means that this YAML file has ended and a new YAML file is going to start here. So let's say let's add another YAML file. Let's say server under servers, or let's say server under servers. I'll say server name. So that is the key and the value is server1 separated. So after colon there is a space. Then you will give owner. Let's say we are giving John. Then created, key is created on, value is 26th of December and status could be running, or let's say active, right? And that's all. This is my first slide. So in a single file, YAML allows you to write multiple data, multiple structures can be written, each separated by 3 dashes. Okay, so let's say we'll write one more related to, let's say, fruits. Okay, so with respect to fruits, you may have, so this is one value. Under this, you can have red, key, value, apple, yellow, you may have a key, banana, right? Green, you may have some green apple or pineapple, anything. Okay, so this becomes the third YAML file. So the first slide here talks about the first dash represents that it is a separator and it allows you to define multiple structures within the single file. Okay, now so let me show you one more example in how to pass list of values in YAML. If you want to pass, we'll come to maps in a minute. If you want to pass list of values in a YAML file, how can you write that? So let's say you have same, the first one. So let's say company. This is key and one single value, Edureka. In Edureka, you have trainings, right? So list of trainings are there at Edureka, colon. You want to pass multiple training as your value, so you will give space, hyphen. Hyphen here indicates a list of values. So let's say DevOps, hyphen, space, And please see, I'm giving a space under trainings also, which means DevOps is coming under trainings, right? Cube hyphen space Selenium space hyphen Docker space hyphen anything machine learning, right? And so on. So these are list of values you are passing to a key. This is just a key and one single value. Whenever for a key you have to pass set of values, you will give separated by hyphen. You'll give list of values in a row and separated by a hyphen and space. That's list of values. List of values. Suppose, let's say after this, timings. Okay, timings. So I can have multiple timings of trainings at Edureka. One is 7 a.m. Then 8:30 a.m. Then let's say 2:30 p.m. Then let's say 8:30 p.m. and so on, right? So these are list of values for the time, right? Okay. Then friends, if there is also one more important thing when you want to define maps, okay, maps. So key value pair is clear. This is key value pair. This is array list in array. This is array or list of values. Okay. Then we have one more format in YAML, that is dictionary map. So dictionary map is a object and then again key and values. So let me give you, let us say training timings. I just want to say, we can take server details, which we were saying. So let's say server. Server is an object here. Under server, name. And then again mapping it to a value. So server is the main object under this name and a value to it. So value, let's say server 1. Okay. Created on 26 December. Then status active, right? Environment dev, like this, right? So this is maps. These are nothing but dictionary or map. Okay, where you have a value, a key and a value mapped to it. One object having multiple keys and multiple values mapped to it. Okay, now these are the 3 different ways that you can write values to your you can write your YAML basic file. Okay. Now, how can we use these YAML files in Kubernetes? I'll show you the example here. So let me directly jump on to the demonstration. So here I'll just log into my Kubernetes cluster. Let's connect to the Kubernetes cluster. I'm using the Google Cloud Platform Kubernetes engine to connect to the cluster. This is a ready-made Kubernetes engine that you can create. I'll connect to the cluster. Okay, so let's write one file here. Let's say I'll create a directory. Okay. In this, let's create a file. Now, every file in which you have to write the YAML code will end with .yaml or with .yml. Okay. So if I say Kubernetes, very basic object that Kubernetes can create on or work on is called as a pod, right? Pod is nothing but which holds your containers, which can have multiple containers in it. So I will just call it as pod definition file. It will have an extension .yml. Okay, so the format in which we are going to write the file is YAML or YAML, anything. In every Kubernetes file, object definition file, you will have 4 sections. First one being API version, which represents the schema using which the object will be created. Then we have the kind of object that you want to create in Kubernetes. Then you have to also mention the data, metadata about the object. And then you mention the specification, that is, what is it that you want to create on this object? What is it that you want on the object? Specify. If you have observed, I've written it in YAML format. All of these are keys to us. A key followed by a colon, key followed by a colon, key followed by a colon. Now let us fill up the data in the YAML format. The very first object, the smallest object that Kubernetes can create on is pod. So I will give the name of the object as pod. I'm assuming that you all have an introduction to Kubernetes because we are learning YAML for Kubernetes. I'm assuming some information of Kubernetes is available. What is a pod is at least you are aware of. The kind of object here is a pod. Now, with every object that we want to create on Kubernetes, we have to also define the API version of it. That is this code library or a schema that Kubernetes is going to use to create this pod. So here it is going to be apps/v1. Apps/v1 is the schema that is used to create, that will be used. No, for pod it is v1 only. Sorry, v1 is the API version for the object pod. Then we have metadata. In metadata, see, I'm going under it. Under metadata, I will define different data related to the pod. So you have to provide at least two information. Now this is written in the form of map because metadata here needs two dictionary items of Kubernetes. One is name. Okay, this is coming from Kubernetes, and its value, name of the pod, let's say my pod, and labels. Now labels is also a key which is coming from Kubernetes. This is not user defined. This is dictionary map. Okay, so key and a value to labels, and name is coming from Kubernetes. Labels. So under labels, you can have multiple labels. Again, these are maps. So how do we write maps? A key followed by a value. So like author, value. You will give value in the form of after this space. Then you write, let's say app, Java, environment, let's say anything. So label can be anything. So the format you are writing, it is the map format. Key and value here, a dev, right? So these are labels assigned to your pod. These are not a list of values, these are maps, okay, dictionary values coming in from Kubernetes. Then under the spec section, in the specification sections, we define what is it that we want on a pod. So in the pod, you will always want a container. So again, under spec, you write a map called as containers, and in a pod, you can have multiple containers also. One container or multiple containers. So under spec, you want containers on the pod. Now to create a container, what is it that we need? To create a container, what is it that we need? So we basically need an image and a name of a container. So since image is user defined, so I'll give hyphen. Okay, I can pass multiple images to create multiple containers on the pod. So I'll say image, name of the image. Let's say 𝐿𝐿 is a Docker image. I am choosing. In my Kubernetes cluster, I have set up, we have Docker installed. So the image we are using is for the Docker container. Image, name of the container. Let's say I give name C1. Okay, now I have given a hyphen here because it's a set of values that we are using for creating a container. Okay, these are set of values for first container. Now I want to create one more set of values, so I'll give again hyphen, one more image, let's say HTTPD, and name of the container is going to be C2. So this is how you pass list of values in your Kubernetes object definition file, and you pass the maps in your object definition file, and this is just purely key and value. This is a list, this is the map. Okay, so this will create a pod which is going to have two containers, right? So let me just execute this and show you this YAML file. Now suppose you miss the indentation, or you don't remember whether the indentation that you have used is correct or not, whether the hyphen is used correctly or not, is the spacing correct or not. Not to worry, ideally Kubernetes will validate your code before it executes, but still you can use a YAML validator available online, that is YAML lint, very popular one, YAML lint. YAML lint is a YAML code validator. Whatever you write in YAML can be validated here. If you just give your code, your Kubernetes code, whatever you have written, I think this editor will not allow me to copy. Hold on, let me just save this file and let's do a cat. Okay, let me copy the file now. And this is the link, friends, YAML lint. YAML lint is an online validator where you can validate your YAML code. If you click on go, it will tell you whether the code that you have written is correct or not. So if you see here, I have an error here. Can you see? I guess when I was trying to copy paste, it messed up my YAML file. Can you see here? It says there is an error on line 2 here. Can you see pod metadata has come up, right? So it should be at this level. Now let's try to click here. Line number 6. See here, author Edureka app also is coming. Okay. Now it says it is a valid YAML file. Now it says it's a valid YAML file. It also adds 3 dashes in the beginning. Okay. So you can use YAML link. Let me give it to you in the chat box to write your YAML code. Now I'll show you one more way to write the YAML code. I'll write one more file. So let me just quickly create this pod and show you the details of it. kubectl create. So how do you create a pod in Kubernetes? kubectl create -f, the name of the file. So we are asking Kubernetes. kubectl is a process that sends any user's request to the API server on Kubernetes, and you can create this file. -f here represents file, name of the file. Okay, so your pod has been created. Now I'll show you one more command which will be useful in Kubernetes just from my end. You can use kubectl explain command. kubectl explain what is a pod. So if you give like this, it will tell you. You can know Kubernetes from Kubernetes command line. You can know what a pod is. It's a collection of containers. What each of the field means: API version, kind, metadata. API version is v1 for pod. Kind of object is pod. So you can use this explain command to know about any of the Kubernetes objects. Then if we have created a pod, you can query kubectl get pods. So here is a pod which got created, but I think it crashed because of 2 containers that were there on my pod here. If I just say kubectl describe pod, my pod, here you go. So here are the details for it. Now it is successfully created. If 1 second, I'll just open it in less. Can you see the format in which the details are given? So this is again in the YAML format, the details are provided. Please see name, value, base value, priority value, node value, right? And labels. These are the different list of values with it. The map, sorry, not list, map, annotation, and so on. Right? Okay. Let's write one more file for today's session. One more YAML file we will write. Let's write down for another object in Kubernetes, that is deployment. So I'll create one more object called as deployment. Every file is going to have an extension .yml. Now in Kubernetes, you will never create one pod. You will want to create multiple pods. So for creating multiple pods, we call it as a replica. And here you can use a deployment or replica set as an object in Kubernetes, or stateful sets in Kubernetes to create multiple objects. Okay, so here we go. Multiple, sorry, not object, multiple replicas of an image. So here again, every YAML file in Kubernetes will have 4 sections. API version, you can have metadata, kind of object that you want to create, metadata, and you also will specify what is it that you want on the object under spec section. So the kind of object that I'm creating is deployment here, and API version is going to be v1, no, app/v1. Now as per the object, this API version keeps changing. Okay, as per the deployment or as per the object, the API version keeps changing. Now metadata here, we'll talk about details about the deployment. So you generally, data is all about names, labels, tags, about the object. So those are multiple values, right? So you will never give key and value in this case. This is key and value. With metadata, you will pass map, set of key and value, that is name, let's say the deployment one. Then label, if you want to give, let's say app, I'll give author Edureka. Okay. Under the specification, you can mention how many replicas you want. So under spec, I want to mention how many pods I want on my cluster. So that is represented by a key called as replicas in Kubernetes, followed by a number, let's say 2, 3, whatever. 3, let's say. Then you also want to give a query. Now, before I move on to the query, before that, now 3 replicas should be created in the Kubernetes. We need to specify how those replicas should be created, what should be on the replicas. So we will use template, another section we have in Kubernetes called as template. So again, I gave a column. So key column, it's a value here. Under template, you have to specify multiple values. Now template becomes a parent, and under it, you may specify pod details. So we say metadata about the pod. Metadata about the pod you will specify, like what is going to be the name of the pod. So name of the pod is going to be, let's say, my pod 1. And what label is going to be on the pod. So on the pod, I'm going to have labels. So again, if you see here, we are again writing the YAML code in the same format. Under template, I have to specify metadata. What is the metadata under metadata? So I've given one space, and then under metadata, we will provide 2 information in Kubernetes, name and labels. So what are the labels? Could be anything. Let's say app is Java. This is my label. And then under template, you also need to provide the container information. So spec, and then you write a containers. What containers are you looking for? What containers are you looking for? Under spec, I have containers. Now these are maps. Okay. All right. Under container, you can give an image. So list of values, image. You can have an image in JSON and the name of the container. Now, why there is no hyphen here? Because these 2 are set of values. These 2 are set of values. Okay. This is one YAML file written for an object called as deployment. Now, after this, you can also add more sections under spec for deployment object. Like if you want to give a query how many replicas are already existing with a similar pod specification. So you can give selector here. Selector is used in Kubernetes. Again, it's a key. And then under the selector, you will mention the label name, app as Java. Okay. So you can also give under it, match the labels, app as Java. So here we are asking Kubernetes to query if there are pods with the label app as Java. If they are, then consider as a replica. Otherwise, take this template and create the pod. Here, if you see, this is again a map and a key and value. It's in the format of map, right? This is also map. This is a key and a value. This is all maps, dictionary, maps. Okay, and then you can also, let's say if I add more details, like you want to give strategy, deployment strategy. So you can define here the deployment strategy, like we have a strategy, rolling update strategy, if you want to define that. So I will give here a rolling update strategy. It's not mandatory, but let's say I'll show you an example of that. So you can give strategy. So this becomes a map. Under it, I'm passing a value like a type of strategy. So key and a value to it, space. So if you see, YAML is so easy to write. You just need to follow the indentation. Under strategy, what is it you want to write? One space. Then key, give a key and a value. Rolling update. Now you may be confused. How will we know whether we have to give strategy, whether we have to give replica, when to give selector? Not to worry. Kubernetes is there to help you. If you go to the KubernetesIO.com, its official website, over there, go to the documentation. Every object, search for it. Let's say I search for deployment. For every object, there is a YAML file available. Deployment. Under deployment, so you can read about the deployment and scroll down. You will find the required YAML file. See here, you have the required YAML file here, right? So this is the basic deployment YAML file that you see, right? And if you want to add more strategies under it, you can go further. So there are 3 strategies: canary deployment, rolling update, and blue and green deployment. You can go and see that by default the strategy that runs in slow rolling update. Let me write it down instead of searching there. Let me write down your rolling update, and then under rolling update you will create one more object rolling update, and you will write down under it And everything in Kubernetes is to be given in camel case. Here you can give max unavailable, any value, max search. Then this is again one value, right? Space. So basically in Kubernetes, you see, we are following list, maps, and key and value. That's all. Now, any object that you want to search, let's say you want to work with pods, okay, you can search for it in Kubernetes, go to that specific object, you will find its YAML file. What should go in the YAML of while creating a pod, everything is given to you. We have also written the same way, API version, kind, metadata, specification, you give the containers that you want, name and image. Right? Similarly, there are other objects like stateful sets also. You can see that stateful sets. And here you have its YAML file. And also, as you see here, if you're writing a YAML file, multiple YAML structures can be written separated by 3 dashes. So you're creating a service object, you are then creating a stateful set also. Okay, so that's all I have for today. I hope you have enjoyed this training on how to write YAML code in Kubernetes. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll close the session.